Yeah, it's bullshit.
So last time we saw each other was in Germany,
Yeah,
was it not?
yeah, into
For
Germany for
what was it? Keep the Headbangers Going Festival 2021.
Defenders of the faith. Yes.
Yep.
I have to admit, like I said, I felt rather old sitting in that backstage. It's when you realize like, oh, everyone here is like 18 to 25, and you realize, oh, I've had this moment, but it was 25 years ago, and with all kind of young bands, and you realize like, oh, okay, maybe it is time for us to pack up our things and head for the hills with a shotgun, and move on, shuffle on, because it's a young person's game, isn't it? Surely.
Well, people weren't as interested in the beer fridge as I seem to recall when I was a young man. But there was loads of good
No.
bands, and like fair play to Dragon for putting it on. Like
Yeah.
Daniel, the guy who organized the festival, is an unbelievably upbeat man.
Yeah.
Like for going through a pandemic and not being able to do anything, and people
Yeah.
queuing in the snow to get into gigs, he was delighted.
He's quite much a man like myself in the sense that the aura of positivity that he radiates is quite similar to mine. I think.
Docking levels of goodness.
Oh, speaking of Dokken, did you watch the link I sent you?
Yeah, I did indeed.
Jesus Christ,
Not
it's.
so good.
I
Not so
mean,
good.
it looks like you're fooled into something because there's a sort of acousticy thing at start, and Dawn is singing a little
You
lilting
were
bit
fooled.
over.
You were
Yeah,
fooled.
but
Absolutely everybody else who likes Docking was not
no, no,
fooled.
no. I mean, fooled us into it. There was a bit where it was like, whoa, whatever, and then it was just when the song started. I mean, of all the songs to choose for a man who's 72 and doesn't seem to be able to walk now, he's has problem walking. Like Tooth and
Yeah.
Nail is one of the hardest fucking songs to get out and sing. I mean, it's so fucking like it's so fucking hard, and it's fucking bad, isn't it?
Well, the fact that he can put on his leather pants,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
he probably has a. Does he not have a small Asian wife who helps him with that? I don't know.
talks him up. Get that talc on, boy. Who
I don't
knows?
know. You've got to feel sorry for him, and he's got to be looking at George Lynch Cook and going, "You fucking prick! Somehow you managed to stay, intact and in shape."
Same with the Blackie Lawless thing. Like Blackie has obviously made the decision where he was like, effort and there has to be some sort of crux. And once he got to that point, he was like, let's just use backing tapes, man.
Hmm.
And David Coverdale was like, yeah, backing tapes. And
Well, I mean, I
Dawkins
will
should have done it years ago.
I
He
will
should have done
argue
it 20 years ago.
I will argue the thing about Wasp in that I've seen I've stood at the side of the stage and watched Wasp at festivals. We've played a few bands before, and I've watched very very closely in Dublin. Or whenever I've seen them, and Wasp are quite sloppy live, right? The drummer doesn't wear headphones, or as far as I can see when I watch them, they don't play along to a click. So unless I'm missing something very specific, but I do. I mean, Blackie doesn't play the guitar much. There's a couple of go 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 things you hear,
Well,
and
if
a
there's
few
vocals on
harmonies.
tape, I'd say that there's guitars or like, and
Uh,
I would imagine the drummer's playing to a click for it. But
but
sure.
well, but the main lead vocal is, I think, mainly still his voice. The chorus is okay, are layered and backed up, and the guitar player isn't singing the choruses, nor is the bass player. So there's layered choruses coming through, but the main voice, that is his voice. He can still sing, I think. But he doesn't play hardly any rhythm guitar. It's the other guy who does nearly everything. There's no doubt there's something
Did
coming from
the
the tape.
Class A interview with him where once they got Johnny Rod in to play the bass. He did an interview where he was all like, "Bass is the tool of the ignorant."
Yeah. Well, I
Kind
mean,
of right though, isn't he?
yeah,
It's kind of hard to, as bass players, us both,
yeah.
sort of hard to argue with that, really.
No, and I'm quite happy to have it as a tool of ignorance. That's all right with me. I don't need any fancy bits and pieces. But yeah, I think Blackie can still sing, whereas David Coverdale, on the other hand, and Don Dokken can't really sing. David Coverdale has his mid ranges are somewhere there, but he can't do any high bits.
I couldn't.
Dokken
I
is.
can't believe that you would even compare the enjoyability of going to see Whitesnake with the shitness of what it must be like going to see Dawkins. Like,
Yeah,
if I
no,
ever
no,
met Don Dawkins, the first thing I would say to him is, "Why don't you put any effort into singing? Why do you
yeah,
sing like you're at a funeral?"
yeah. I mean, no, I know. Don't get me wrong. Whitesnake still puts in the effort. He just doesn't. He has his middle range, but there's sometimes I go on a weird horror trip where I go and watch old bands to see how well they can still sing. I think we must have talked about this before, and the worst I found was fucking Bon Jovi, Rock in Rio, 2019. Holy shit! He
Pure
just,
bomb.
whew, it's fucking awful. Klaus Meine is like 10 times better.
Yeah, but would you not imagine though that like a lot of the people who are going to see Bon Jovi, you know, with the kind of loads of backing vocals, big arena show, it's
Yeah.
not as big a deal. Like
No,
Dawkins,
no.
just you're in a club and you're watching a real old man make wispy noises at you, you know.
Yeah, no, it is worse. You're totally right. You're totally right. But I understand the kind of need to want to keep going and whatever. But what I don't understand is maybe if you're going to keep on playing and keep on going around, is to kind of go, all right, we're going to go on a crash diet, try and lose like fucking, two stone or something like this, and try and get in shape at least to be able to.
Yep.
Because there's a moment there watching that docking video, and it looks like he's struggling to stand up, to walk. Like
He should go on to Cameo or whatever, because that's the great thing, isn't it? Like, you know, these guys like Vince Neil or other notable musicians, whenever they do their cameos, and you're like, you look really stoned, you know, like, and not in a cool way where you're like, wow, it's like this is why your albums suck, you know. You've been hanging around getting like
yeah,
the lockdown was probably the best thing that ever happened, Vince Neil, because he was all like, I used to have a personal trainer, and now I don't have to worry about that until whatever time in the future.
yeah, yeah. I heard some stories as well about that. Still, even on the last European tour that Dokken were playing, like somebody told me, because people knew at the time that I was doing this silly kind of, hey, I'm 67% Dokken kind of thing, and people would message me out of nowhere going, I saw Dokken in Barcelona last night. It was a disgrace. Watch this, and they sent me hand filmed footage, and he was so fucking wasted, like so
Yep.
wasted, like, and put the guitar on to play Break in the Chains and never just didn't take it off. And he's like, I'll just play the other songs as well. And I mean, apparently in Athens he was a fucking hot mess as well. And you want to
Yeah, well, I remember
go,
you were telling me about that. But you
yeah,
know, man, like this is the thing. Would you really want to go out and do it under the circumstances that we're putting these people, where we're saying you're not allowed to get wasted all the time? Do you want to go on
um,
tour sober? Like, do you like touring enough to want to sit in a van and
yeah.
do it?
If I had to, if someone said to me, well, I mean, I don't.
It's either that or get a job, son.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like it enough to. If somebody said, I'll give you a bet. You either do it sober or don't do it at all. I do it sober every time, no problem. But,
Yeah.
um, but I mean, my days of like heaving into the whiskey before playing, like half a bottle before playing, the rest of the bottle while playing, and then whatever else afterwards. They kind of stopped around 2010 because it just got. It wasn't so much that the singing had got to me yet, because I was still pretty young, but that I would like jump off the stage to hit somebody or fall over or kick something over or get into just trouble, and it was just annoying for everyone else. Like Kieran would be like, "You don't sing coffin ships and spend the time in the crowd trying to hit some young fella who's been giving you the finger," or what, do you remember? And so the whole thing just had to stop. And so, but it
Yep.
did. But it's hard to imagine what it must have been like to be in 1988 playing fucking arenas, to all of a sudden be playing to 120, 150 people, and you've been just used to tipping away at the old Jack Daniels for 30, 35 years. Only now you're 65, and like, I don't know, or maybe it's not. Having said that, I sent you some Rat footage from this year, and they sounded fucking great.
I didn't watch it.
Ah,
I
Stephen
don't want
Piercy,
like for
with
every
evil.
every Dokken video or rat video that you send, I will watch one of them every like 10 times just because they'll be like, ah, whoa, here's like more rat, more Dokken, more rat.
Also,
More.
I sent you.
Like the people who are watching this are going to be like, this conversation started with talking about Dokken again. You know, it's like there wasn't even a prelude where it's all like, so how are you guys getting on? It was just immediately into the
Well,
Dokken abuse.
I also sent you a link to Winger doing 17 now.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird to watch men who are between 55 and 60 singing "She's only 17" or whatever it is? And
Yeah, but see the thing, like the
Hip has
Beatles
the
did, like
fucking
so
radio headset mic, which we've discussed
whenever
before.
like Paul McCartney's like she was just 17, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People are like, this is awesome. And whenever Winger does it, I know loads of people who like Winger who are like, that song is now creepy,
Yeah,
because they're now, and like, I don't know.
but he
But
probably
yeah,
wrote it
like
when he
he's
was
a fan of
25.
this mic, isn't he? He's
Ugh.
like, he doesn't want to be restrained. And the worst thing about this mic is frequently people who have this mic on will start doing things to show that they can use both their hands. Like, and you're like,
At least Kip is playing. He has to play the bass, but he does a lot of this kind of. Nobody
me
should be
and
doing
you
that.
and Alan should spend a year using these mics. And once we do, we'll never go back. We'll just be like, that's it.
I can only imagine what I would do with my hands if I had the mic set thing. It would be a disaster because I always say to people, it's kind of stage, kind of craft, kind of thing, whatever you want to call it, without sounding too ridiculous. But holding onto the mic stand is it's like a kind of shield and a kind of thing you hold on to and use as a bit of a stage prop. Without it, you're like, hey, mama, or whatever, you know. I don't like playing without
You know who's the best
the
ever?
stand.
Joey Tempest from Europe is like a man who is at the front of a parade. Like
Right?
his mic twirling skills, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he can do it all. You
What is
know,
that called? The parade people with the baton or what the fuck are they
baton
called?
twirler. I don't know.
Yeah, with the big
Americans
tall
always tell us.
hats.
Yeah, something, some sort of thing.
Something to be answered in the comments underneath, I think. What are they called?
Find out next time.
Right, exactly. What was the first question or the first thing that we were going to discuss? You had bad live albums. I had good live albums, and then we had one album that is widely considered, or one album that you would defend that is widely considered something of a classic that you don't like, or something that I worded that badly.
Wow. Okay, so give me a good live album.
All right, I have a pile of live albums here. I think this is my favorite live album. I have a feeling we've done this before, and I've showed this before through something. Slade live
Talk about
1972.
this album all the time, don't they? And
Huh?
it was recorded same? Is it same year, same venue as the Who live at Leeds? I think.
No,
Maybe?
it's recorded in a BBC. As I understand, it's recorded in a small BBC studio. It's only about 400 or 500 people, but people who don't really know Slade think of all the usual, come on, feel the noise and whatever. None of those songs are on this. It's an absolute stormer. It's a fucking amazing.
Very loud
record.
album, isn't it?
Ugh.
I know it's one of the things. That's
I mean,
like,
it's got
same
hear
as
me.
Live at
It's
Leeds.
got
It's full of
hear
like
me calling. Yeah, in a shot from my gun, and like a shot from Darling Be Home Soon, John Sebastian cover, which is really beautiful. Like his voice is off the charts. Speaking of Blackie Lawless, so I think Blackie Lawless tried to copy a bit. Get Down, Get With It. It's an absolute fucking Stonewall classic for me. I think it's up
Hard
there
to
with If You Want Blood, You Got It. As maybe my favorite live album, or at least one of my favorite live albums.
Did I tell you my story about going to see Slade at Working Men's Club in Liverpool a couple of years ago?
No, go for that.
With like 140 other people. Obviously, Noddy was not there because he's making 50 million quid a year from his Christmas tune.
Sure.
But so it was like the original drummer and the guy with the insane hairdo.
Yeah, Dave Hill. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave Hill, and then some other guy playing bass, and then the guy who was playing bass was wearing, I don't know, some of you people out there in internet land who are not Alan might know this, Jerry from the Spice Girls dress, which is like a Union Jack glittery kind of like small dress. So he was wearing that during the gig, and then he turned around and there was a tricolor on the back of it, and because it was Liverpool, everyone was like, yo.
Wow.
And they were doing like shots of Fireball whiskey for 50p. So like me and the missus were like the youngest people there. It was full of like everyone else there was still a Slade fan club member. They had been there in the 70s.
Wow.
And they were still there.
I saw them at Sweden Rock a couple of years ago, and the singer guy who stands in. He could sing. I mean, it was pretty cool. Like I saw Dave Hill eating a sausage at the breakfast buffet the next morning, and I really wanted the photo with him, but he looked so sad. and
Yeah.
just looked very kind of like, oh, take me home. I don't want to be
His
sitting here.
commitment to platform boots is outstanding, though. Like
Yeah,
for a man that I presume is not 6 foot, he's extremely tall. He's like a Gene Simmons height character, you know.
yeah. It's also quite a dark cover, which I quite like. It's quite weirdly strange. Like this sort of Planet of the Apes face going on Noddy. I don't know. I would recommend it to anybody who really likes 70s rock to get on it, you know. There's no
They're one of those
doubt.
bands like them and Sweet, both.
Sweet. Yeah.
Every commercial hit they had on the B side, there was usually a proper rocker, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Like
I
they,
mean
they
I'm
were really good at like dividing the set between here's something that's gonna chart and here's something that's gonna blow your ears off.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know?
No, I can totally go for the Sweet. In fact, the Sweet must have a live album, I would imagine, so that would probably be in that list if I uh
If you
well,
ventured forth
I must go
into
and
it.
find it. Right, give me a crappy live album. And if you don't have it, I'll
Some
put a picture
people
of it up.
might disagree. I don't like Rainbow on stage, so I don't.
Really?
Yeah. Um, Similar kind of reason as Deep Purple. Now, I guess if you're at the gig, and you're extremely high and stuff, it would be brilliant seeing like 15-minute versions of the songs and stuff. But like the same deal as again, like made in Japan.
Mm.
It's only like 6 or 7 songs. There's very, very long, jams of songs on it and stuff. And also there's too many covers. Like, if there's 7 songs on the record,
Yeah.
I don't think it's cool to have like a Deep Purple song that's 10 minutes long and a Yardbirds song that's 10 minutes long.
Really? Is there what's the Yardbirds then that they're doing? Or can you remember?
What's the song from the
I mean,
first
is there
Richie Blackmore's Rainbow? There's one of the songs on
oh,
the B side of that they do. Now, I suppose to be fair to them, like I think the album, like Rainbow on
talking
Stage, was released I think before Long Live Rock and Roll, so it's only stuff from the first 2 albums that they can jam on. But I don't know, like I heard it before I heard the best of Rainbow, and I was like, this is more like kind of like Deep Purple jammy stuff. Whereas like whenever you get into Rainbow and like realize how insanely technical and proggy they are, it was great and not as jammy as they seemed on that record.
I mean on stage there like a 12-minute version of Mistreated and stuff. And there's, I know what you mean. Those early 70s albums were very sort of indulgent, with loads of jam parts, and that's what always put me off. What's the famous Deep Purple one?
Yeah, that's the one we're talking about.
Made in Japan. Yeah, okay.
But it was the same deal with like Blue Oyster Cult, their biggest one, on Your Feet or On Your Knees. There's 6 or 7 songs in it. So there's like a 10-minute version of one song, 10-minute version of Don't Fear the Reaper and stuff. And it's just I don't know.
Why did Blue Oyster Cult feel the need that they weren't one of those jammy proggy bands? It just, I mean, I know why Deep Purple did it when you watch that footage of. That's what people loved about going to see a band back then, that they could see musical dexterity in these big jammy versions.
And like if you look at the other, there are other Rainbow live albums, and same as BOC, they've lots of live albums, but they tend to be very, here's 15 songs.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I suppose maybe that was the vibe at the time, because I know a lot of people talk about, the Lizzie album, the UFO album and stuff.
Yeah.
It was like a best of, this is a way to get like all of your favorite songs by Lizzie on one album,
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about them in a minute, but I mean...
But yeah, like Rainbow on Stage, there's probably people who'll disagree with me, but for me, it was too... It made me think that like Rainbow were just going to be a more bluesy, Deep Purple type vibe. And that's not actually what Rainbow were about at all, like,
No. So in a sense, it was too jammy.
Too jammy.
It's a record.
Also, like, not a great sound, like, it doesn't sound killer, like, it just sounds a bit sort of boomy. Like, and the fact that they make such a big deal of the Rainbow, and you're like, I don't know, maybe if you were there, it would look amazing, but, sometimes whenever you see the Motorhead Bomber rig or whatever, or the Saxon Eagle, and you're like, maybe if you've had a load of Scrumpy Jack or something, it's brilliant.
Hang on a sec. Wait, press pause for a second. Recording in progress. Well, okay. I'll pick what I think is a really good live album, and that is Ufo Strangers the Night. This was my uncle when he got out of rock and got into New Romantic somewhere in '83 or '84. he gave me a bunch of his old cassettes, which he used to kind of like paint the logos brilliantly on the spine and a few 7 inches. He didn't really give me any vinyls, but he gave me about 10, 15 cassettes. And UFO, the UFO cassette was my, I guess it was about 9. Let me think. Eliminator is 83. So it's about 84. It's before Who Made Who, so I think it's about Fly on the Wall, just before that. But my favorite tape to play was UFO Strangers in the Night. And it's just a fucking storming fucking live record.
It's so much better than all of their albums, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
there's no album, no studio album that comes even remotely close to how good that record is.
No, and I mean I love the post 1980s records. Some of the No Place to Run, and
it's not Mick Ralphs. What's the guy who replaced Schenker in the early 80s? That guy.
Oh,
those records.
Paul Raymond, is it Paul Tonka, whatever it's called?
He's the rhythm guitar guy who
okay. Okay, the other fella. I'll think of it in a minute. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the UFO studio albums from the 70s, but there was always one sort of wistful, sort of cocaine Fairport convention type song, and always a kind of Wicker Man-y type song that used to get on my nerves. But when they were rocking, just like Lizzie, I mean, they're fucking hard to beat when they're on full tilt to UFO. But this is, I hate the artwork. Like, it's just, I think it's Hypnosis as well, which is, the fucking Pink Floyd people. I'm pretty sure. Covered by Hypnosis, yeah. It's fucking rubbish, Hypnosis.
I like it. It's definitely individual.
Do you? But doesn't it? Well, I mean, it doesn't.
They never had good covers though. Like if you think of all their album covers, this is their best one, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. Is it? It's fucking like. Does that say Heavy Rock double live album, or does that say Thompson Twins first single to you?
I think that obviously, like, this is where Metallica got the idea for their recent awful album cover, isn't it? Like, this is the vibe.
Oh yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah. It does look a bit like Hardwired, which is terrible artwork.
Yeah, but sure, that would be a given. It makes you go, wow, man. Actually, Load and Reload actually had pretty good album covers, didn't they? Compared to that, or maybe not.
Well, anyway, that's why I would pick this. Anybody who wants to start with UFO, or
I would say start and
finish.
Them. Like, it's very, very hard to top. And most of their great stuff. They do, as you said, they do have some early 80s stuff that's good as well. But
yeah, for sure.
Like, if you go and see them on their last tour, which you should, they'll probably play about 3/4 of this record. Like,
I mean, the side 3, the double whammy of Lights Out into Rock Bottom, the extended Rock Bottom. This is one of the best sides of any live album, in my opinion. Absolute fucking classic. Anyway, okay, go for it. Give me a shitty live album.
Delving into the depths of awfulness here. So like
that's all right.
The ones that were like particularly well known, just more things.
That's all right, because I've reached for sort of like top shelf live albums. I've got a few weird ones here, but I've reached for top shelf because I figured at least they're good fucking conversation pieces, but I don't know. There's probably some dodgy ones that I'm for sure missing, or they're not in my they're not floating through my transom at this particular moment.
What about Live Without Sense by Destruction?
Yep. All right. Hang on. Let's keep talking, or let me press pause for a moment. Yep. All right. Go on. Live Without Sense.
Live Without Sense. So, you know what? Like, I suppose the Butcher guy is not that bad a mascot, is he?
No.
Like, the album cover is the best thing about the record.
I mean, to me, growing up and being into Destruction, late 80s and stuff, I got this record, must have been like 88, 89, like, oh, cool, live Destruction album, and it made virtually no impact on me at all. I mean, it's got, I remember it really irritated me that it had Pink Panther and In the Mood on it, like really irritated me.
Which is so, it's such a about face for Destruction, because, coming from an evil place, and also, what's the album that this came, the tour that this came from? Is it
This is
Release from Agony?
Eternal Devastation.
No, it's Release from Agony because Live
Oh,
Without
it is.
Sense.
You're right. It's
What's
Release
it
from
up
Agony.
there?
Yeah. The inside
But
is Release from Agony.
yeah, like I suppose, look, it looks cool. You know, the design of it's cool, but the production on it is awful. It just doesn't feel evil, and it
No.
feels really, really kind of studio-y and stuff. And probably the reason why I come down on it so hard is because I friggin' love Mortal Way of Live, the Sodom live album, because it's so real, like, you know, and there's obviously no overdubs, and it's just full of like noise and
Yeah.
coolness, and the artwork is just obscene and ridiculous. And
Yeah. I
but
mean,
yeah, so like
I'll
Live
probably have to
Without
get
Sense,
that.
it's
But
one of the I honestly think there's a couple of other thrash albums in my, you know, worst of list here.
okay.
I don't really think that it works that well. There's not, like, fair enough. Decade of Aggression by Slayer, it's really good. You know, the Under Siege by Sepulture is really good.
Yes,
Anthrax at Hammersmith. But
Under
generally,
Siege is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, the video for that is one of the best live
yeah,
video
it's,
performances
it's
ever.
fantastic.
It's top
But
three.
like you would say that generally there's so much thrash out there where just it doesn't translate properly at all. Like,
I mean,
you know,
listen to the B side of Flag of Hate with I mean, they're cool, or is it? Hang on. Is it Awakening of the Gods and a few of the other things? Maybe it's Terrible Certainty live on the B side of Out of the Dark into the Light or something. It's pretty ropey.
Yeah.
Out of tune and stuff. There's something about this record though. I remember it just being very underwhelmed with the production. Like it was sort of had that do like big
like
snare.
when would you imagine was the last time you played that record? Like,
I would say the last time I played this record might have been 1990. Maybe.
When Cracked Brain came out and you were like, hey, this album ain't so bad.
Well, I didn't even like Release from Agony, so I mean, and I actually don't really like Eternal Devastation. I love Curse the Gods, but I don't, and I like Reject Emotions, I think, but I'm not into the rest of it. I mean, for me, Destruction is really those first two records, and then some of the newer stuff. The first one back, you know, The Butcher Strikes Back and all that kind of stuff, which is way better than most of, like, really, you know.
I went to see them in the Village. I think you were there. There was like about 20 people at it or whatever, and started taking requests, and I was like, play the Pink Panther. No.
That won't have gone down too well. Right, let me find a live record that's maybe... Well, I've got loads of really, really typical ones here, so I think that's maybe the way to go. Speaking of bad thrash albums, like, we can put that down as one of them. Live Scars is not great.
Yeah, we've already discussed Live Scars, and it's...
Oh, we have. All right. Well, I mean, you can't really go through live albums without If You Want Blood, You Got It. I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but it is a complete no-brainer. And this, if one of the live records we're talking about is absolutely live, you can tell it's this one. This is one is just like a fucking, it's a fucking outrageously full tilt record, you know.
And this was again the first album that I got, you know, by
Really?
DC. Yeah, this was the first album that I ever heard by DC. So
Right.
I'd never even heard Highway to Hell or any Back in Black, any of that sort of stuff.
Really?
So, yeah, and like I ended up totally loving, you know, Let There Be Rock, the album that you know, this was in support of.
Yeah.
Just because loads of the songs, like, you know, Go Down and stuff like that, it was just an amazing era for DC, you know.
Yeah. But what's
like,
weird?
Highway to Hell is obviously a brilliant album, but Highway to Hell is so much more commercial. This album is like a proper rock assault, like, you know.
Yeah, but also what's weird about it is that if you take Let There Be Rock, the songs which I would have thought would have been crackers for the live, like Overdose, they aren't on this.
No.
I mean, from Let There Be Rock, you've got Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, Bad Boy Boogie. I mean, The Jack, which I wouldn't put on any fucking record, to be honest with you. But, you know. Well, you've got Power Age stuff here as well. You've got Rock and Roll Damnation. Just there, track 2 on side 2. So it's an unusual record in that it's not stacked with too many. Well, I suppose you've got Riff Raff opening. I mean,
is there anything from the first album at all on it? Is there? Or
yeah, well, you've got the Jack and you've got High Voltage.
Right. Yeah.
Rocker, which shouldn't be anywhere near.
What? It's amazing.
Rocker really? I mean, it
Do
would the
you
rock.
prefer Rocker by Thin Lizzy or Rocker by AC/DC? That's the real question.
Rocker by Thin Lizzy every time. I mean, I would. The fact that it hasn't got like, I mean, there's songs from Power Rage and Let There Be Rock that should. I mean, would you put Overdose on your record, or would you put the Jack or Problem Child as well? But I don't like Problem Child much. I'd rather have Ain't No Fun. I know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like them, but there's better songs, isn't there?
Yeah, no, like there are, but I don't know. Like I
But
think
it's
that
a
the Jack is the most enjoyable on this, and that's on every single live album they've
yeah.
done. And
But
his
it
like
is an
Bond's version
absolute
of it is much better.
yeah. But it's absolutely incredible. And watching footage of them playing back then, I couldn't even imagine being in a band trying to play after them. Who could? I mean that footage.
Yeah.
There's footage of live in '78. I think it's in Leeds Polytechnic. Rock Goes to College is top 2, 3, 4, 5. Like it's in that top tier of live footage of any band playing ever. It's just,
They
it's
toured on
just
this, and they were the opening band, and it was like these guys, Thin Lizzy,
and
Rush,
Queen.
and Rainbow.
Wow. Say that lineup again.
AC/DC, Thin Lizzy, Rush, and Rainbow
Wow.
in '78. That would have been
What, USA '78 or
yeah.
Europe?
No, USA.
You
Like, I
can
think all those
imagine.
bands were able to like do their own European and UK tours, headlining, you know,
Mm,
Hammersmith Odeons or Polytechnic type venues, whereas they just want to go to the States, and if you want to play in front of 25,000 people, it was always like Mott the Hoople or fucking.
yeah. Well, you had Queen, Tin Lizzy, and AC/DC before as well.
Yeah,
But I can imagine a sort of that would be Rainbow on its final legs with
that would have been
Dio,
the
right?
end of the Dio era, and it would have been Rush. I think they were doing like after what's the one after 2112? Is it Farewell to Kings or whatever?
Farewell to
That sort
Kings
of era.
is Farewell to Kings before or after 2112?
Oh, it's after for sure.
Hmm. Well, for
Believe it.
sure
I
you
think it
could
might.
you could see AC/DC just absolutely slaughtering in a stadium full of people and a Rainbow noodling away with 12-minute
Yeah.
versions of Mistreated and
It's weird though because like there are bands that like there's a massive comparisons between something like Status Quo
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
DC, and it was like DC really tied the market up for boogie. Like they had so much boogie rock in America that they didn't really need to import it.
Yeah.
So like I don't really think that Quo really had much of a chance of breaking America because
And
there was
also
a
Quo,
prevalence of that.
I mean, what actually, to be honest with you, Quo's live 72, 74 record should be in my pile here. Where the fuck is it? I don't know. I'm not going to go. I could root around for that in this Mortal Way of Life and make another cut, but we'll leave it. But yeah, the Quo Live 74 album is Savage, but I don't think they're all right. How's it going? Boogie thing. If they'd go over to the USA maybe in 71, 70 instead of 75, 76, maybe it would have worked. But you're right. AC/DC cornered the market in barroom boogie.
Yep. As I said, just because America already had so much of that stuff going on.
Right, give me a bad live record now. Is it this one?
Now, this one might. I don't. I can't even see that. They're so old. I still can't see it. What is it? Oh, Angel Witch Live. This album is Queensryche, The Art of Live,
Wow. Never even fucking
1999.
heard of it. I hate the title to begin with.
So, like, they obviously there was.
Is this the
Operation
version
Mindcrime.
of Operation Mindcrime with all the trumpets and the vaudeville? Oh,
No, it's worse than that, man.
right.
It's worse than that.
Really?
So, like, yeah, this is like from like it might be from 2000 or so, but it's like they had obviously done Operation Live Crime and stuff in the early 90s, and like were in bad form with that or didn't want to keep on doing songs from that album. So there's no songs from The Warning on it, no songs from Rage from Order. There's one song from fucking whatever it's called, Operation Mindcrime, a couple of songs from Empire, but it's mostly like songs from is it Promised Land and what's the one after Empire?
Yeah, Promised Land. That's the one with the fucking ear on it, isn't
So
it?
like it's one of those things where you look through the 17 or 18 songs, just being like, I could not imagine how awful being at this gig would be, like. So, and I don't know, it might be just after your man, the other guitar player, left, and they
Oh
were in
yeah,
a bit
yeah.
of a bit of a flux, but it's there's no good songs on it. Like if you could imagine your worst Queen Shrike set list, it would be that, just songs from 1992 or 1990 straight through to 2000, and no
Ugh.
80s music really.
I mean, I had a really, I can still remember the look on the faces of, I was talking with the guys from Fate's Warning, um, about, just happened to talking about gigs and some of the worst and funniest things I saw, and they both, their faces when they discussed the, the sort of vaudeville jazzed up kind of version of Operation Mike or whatever, a bunch of songs that were on in LA in like a small theater, and there was all kind of bowler hats and sort of intrigue, and the Red Bass Band embarrassingly stood
It
playing
was a
there.
blue review though, so it was, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
Kate came out wearing a dressing gown and a pair of pants,
that's I mean,
you know, and there
so
was like
amazing,
strippers and stuff.
like a sort of Hugh Hefner style or something like this. Can you imagine? Like and lots of saxophone solos.
But at least that has a spectacle value where you're like, I can't believe I'm watching something this horrendous.
Yeah, yeah. That's the
The
point.
art of live is one of those things that, like, I think it was whenever someone's like, oh man, if you love Maiden or whatever, check out Queen Shrike.
Yeah.
And again, that was the album that I got, The Art of Live, and there was just so little good music on it that it was like, you know what, Queen Shrike are absolutely awful, like, you know, and they're not.
Well, I mean, is there any point in us talking about this really? I mean, there
Well,
isn't. There isn't.
in terms of production,
It's
like
the
for
best
being such a
live heavy metal
seminal,
record, isn't it? Like live album, I think, got to be one of the best.
yeah, like it's very, very, and all the other stuff that they've ever done live has just paled in comparison.
Yeah, I
Nico's
remember.
drums sound brilliant, the bass sounds brilliant, the solos, like the rhythm guitar doesn't sound great, but the rhythm guitar in all those early Maiden albums, apart from the first one, isn't that great, you know. So like, I think it's, I don't think the guitars need to be up front in Maiden.
No,
It can be a lot of like bass and drums and vocals and solos, you know.
I think the guitars sound good. There's no doubt about it. But they don't bite the same way as Power Slave does. They don't have quite the dynamic range, but I still think it sounds amazing. And I remember
in terms of the set list though, right? So if you look at would you say that it is as strong as like No Sleep Till Hammersmith or like Live and Dangerous? It might even twig it, you know. There's very few songs that I would say on Live After Death I wouldn't like to see in a modern Maiden set, you know.
No, I mean, I will say that there's a few. I mean, there is surprises on it. When you look at it, it's a long time since I've played it, and I should do. But Die With Your Boots On.
Side.
Die With Your Boots On is an interesting choice, you know, because you don't get Flight of Icarus. Oh no, you get Flight of Icarus at the end of side one. Yeah, I mean, there's a surprising lack of no, I don't know. 22 Acacia Avenue is an unusual.
Yep.
An unusual track. I mean, there's no killers on it, which is quite interesting. But no, it's. I mean, me and my mate used to walk home from school every day, and there used to be about 30 vinyls in this old newsagent. This is like 1986 or something like this. And every day we would come home, walk home, we'd stop in the shop to buy fucking sweets, and we would look at this record. It was just stuck in the middle of all these other records, and we used to just literally look at the inside, look at all the pictures, and look at all the dates and all the stuff, and like save up your 10-20p. This is a very romantic story. 10 or 20p every week till one day when I actually bought it, and took it home to listen to, and the rest, as they say, is history. But just that, looking at it every day, going, wow, imagine what this must sound like. Imagine owning this. That's a good story, isn't it?
Same, like, you know, the best qualities of those kind of live albums. It really, like, it is the best of Maiden. You know, it's got the best stuff on it.
Look at these guys. Look at this. Hang on. Where is he? Hey! Cool.
Great mustache.
Good mustache. Yeah, and I used to cut out bits of ads and put them in my old records. So the joy of having all these old ads is that you get a picture of pretty maids on the back.
Brilliant. That says we are not Cinderella copyists or whatever.
They wish they were Cinderella copyists. That's quite a fucking high acclaim. Yeah, I mean, you notice I haven't picked out Beast from the East. I haven't picked out Dokken. It's a bit of a kind of a ropey live album, isn't it?
Like it's good for Dawkins, but I don't think it should be discussed in the same breath. Really, as you know,
No. I mean,
these
all right,
albums.
give me a shitty one then.
Okay, so Metal Church brought out one recently, and like I'm not really
What?
a fan
Really?
of like giving out about live albums that have come out recently, but this album had like one song from Metal Church and one song from The Dark, and then the rest of it was all just stuff from the early '90s, like you know,
Yeah.
which is insane, like you know. I think that you know, obviously they were in a situation with having Mike Howe back in the band that they didn't want to big up the David Wayne era too much or whatever, but it just seems a bit. It seems a bit shit that like the idea you're going to bring out a live record that is going to have two or three awful studio re-recordings of you know Mike Howe era stuff,
Sure.
and then just live versions of the same songs. You know.
Yeah, we played a gig or two with Metal Church there when he came back, and I remember standing at the stage of somewhere in Portugal at some festival, and Kieran just looked at me and goes, "Is he doing jumping jacks?" And I was like, "He sure is," and
Yep.
just his sort of yoga instructor energy was quite
I think it's
interesting.
cool though that the fact that he had a whole buzz going on, you know, and he was a cool front man, and it's sad that he's not around, you know,
Yeah,
because
he looked very happy. I'll give him that.
you know if you like, that's a shit. I love Metal Church, and I love some of the stuff that he did back in the '80s and stuff, but the singer on their first album and second album is dead. The singer on their third, fourth, and fifth, like, where do you go from there? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, it's I don't know where you would go. I would say try out with getting some young guy if you're going to continue. This is a crappy live album. That's crappy
It's
live
that
albums go.
intermission by Dio.
It's not very good. It's pretty.
You
It's
know,
like a hastily done thing. The sound is pretty bad.
I'd say that like is the track listing okay on it or whatever.
It's weird. It's like it's got King of Rock and Roll, Rainbow in the Dark, Sacred Heart, Time to Burn, and a medley of Long Live Rock and Roll and Man on the Silver Mountain into We Rock.
So
It's
did it
not
come
great.
out? Did it come out before the Sacred Heart? Didn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's not great. It's like some sort of filler to go on tour. It's not a great record. This, however, is a fucking live masterpiece, I reckon. All the world's a stage.
Yeah, because again, they've done ones like you know after that exit stage left and stuff that didn't have any of the magic of this record. You know,
No, I
like I
mean,
found exit stage left, it wasn't immediately listenable, whereas that album was just a fantastic gateway into getting into Rush. You know,
yeah.
and just really loving their '70s vibe.
And also, I love all these old kind of inlay photo kind of things going on. Yeah, this
Yep.
is a particularly, like, I resisted Rush a little bit when I was a kid. I just I didn't quite get it, you know? I mean, Exit Stage Left, I think it's pretty cool, but this one somehow has a better vibe or something. It sounds like a band on the way up, still like sort of hungrier or something. Could that be right?
That's brilliant.
But the versions
But
of Fly By Night and something for nothing. I love this song. Um, yeah,
I love the rock and roll ones from the first two albums, like
Working
What You're
Man and
Doing
stuff. Yeah,
and what you know, brilliant songs, and
yeah,
it's so cool to see that they came from being that Zeppelin worshipping entity that they were on the first album and just took flight, you know. And
yeah.
like,
It makes me want to listen to this now. Yeah, this is I mean, like it's kind of it's the record that sort of changed my sort of trajectory with Rush, and made me go out and then and get all the records because they weren't.
yeah,
As a kid, they weren't what Priest were or a Maiden or whoever were to me. They were a bit more cerebral, and I don't think I wanted that at the
I
time.
suppose it is worth saying to folks here that like whenever we were buying albums like that or Hemispheres or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever albums, frequently you were able to get them in secondhand shops for like £2,
yeah.
you know.
Next
So
to nothing.
it's not the way it is now where like, you know, if you want a copy of Exit Stage Left, it's gonna cost you €25 or €30 or
Yeah,
whatever the fuck, like, you know.
I mean, you could have bought this for £4 or £3.
Yep.
Unleashed in the East.
And I don't like, let's be honest here, it's way better for the studio tinkery. There's no issue with doing that. Like I don't like it unless it's an insanely obvious kind of thing. Like, you know, Megadeth did a Rust in Peace live album from 2010.
What's that like?
And Mustaine like redid all the vocals in the studio so that they don't sync up, you know, with the video and stuff. And it just sounds it sounds
Really?
awful, like, you know.
I mean, I used to have on cassette Judas Priest Osaka. I think it was the night before BBC radio broadcast the night before this, where his voice was in tip top, and it has like this huge gonzoid version of what's the song? Song from the first album, yeah, Tyrant. Like a bit quite different to quite different to the versions here, you know. But yeah, I mean, you can't argue with this. This is a great record, and the expanded CD version with all the extra songs that they cut out of it is brilliant.
Yeah, like Running Wild, and I think Evening Stars on it, and a whole bunch of other.
Running Wild is second. Running Wild is second on the track listing here, but yeah, there's for sure a whole bunch of other stuff.
We talked about this before. Like, it's a testimony we were saying in the Priest versus Maiden chat that, like,
yeah,
that live album has
I prefer this one.
None of the songs that were on that live album, you know. So
this is a brilliant live record. This is underestimate this at your peril. This is a fucking. I almost prefer this. This is fucking brilliant. This record.
So, would you consider Live in the Raw by Wasp a good live album?
No.
No.
Well, I could have got that out there. Thing with Live in the Raw that I love about it is that it has Harder, Faster, and The Manimal on it. So it has those two tracks that I love, and it's got Scream Until You Like It stuck at the end of the record. And so I love it for that. But as a record, as a live record, you can tell it's not live. You can tell the crowd is just, and there's no, and you can hear boo when he mentions the PMRC, and you're like, this isn't live. But I do think it has a kind of cool energy. It has a kind of cool energy.
Like, I thought it was great because I got into the first Wasp album.
Yeah.
And then had like someone's like, oh, the rest of their stuff isn't that great, or I think it was like someone played me Headless Children, and I wasn't as into it. Whereas whenever I got like one of my exes was a massive Wasp fan, and she had Live in the Raw, and like I didn't realize that they had so many great songs, you know, from that era, like, you know, 9 to 5 Nasty and stuff like that.
Just pause it there for 1 second. Seamless editing there. Live in the Raw. Yeah, I mean,
Live in the Raw.
I mean, yeah, you got Scream Until You Like It, Harder, Faster, and the Manimal, which are the Manimal and Harder, Faster are two of the best Wasp songs that there is. Why the fuck are they on no record? I mean, I don't know where they came from or what's going on, but the track listing is brilliant. I mean, Wild Child 95
I love all his chat and stuff. Like, I think it brings out Blackie's personality brilliantly. Now, fair enough, the production is shite and stuff, like, but once you get into the vibe of it, it's
I don't think it's shite, but it's very, it sounds weird. Like the pocky snare, which is weird. It's real 90s, modern sounding. And like, there's it sounds like they just went through it in the rehearsal room and then just added the crowd afterwards. But it's got a charm. Certainly got a charm, you know?
Yep. Well, like, I don't know. It was a great, like, sort of introduction to some of their 80s stuff for me. Like.
Yeah.
So it was.
What do you want to something
like,
good?
I was going to bring up like a pet peeve of mine with live albums is
go for it.
Pardon me. Bands bringing out fucking audience recordings as live albums. Hellstar have got one. Like, you know, fucking Metal Church have got one and stuff.
Really?
And back in the 90s, whenever people did not know any better, they were going in and spending their 15 quid in the shop and being like, the fuck is this? Like, this is literally an audience bootleg, you know?
I mean, I do think that I have noticed this with some bands. They constantly keep trying to spike their Spotify with live stuff. Go into Testament Spotify, and there's like 10 or 12 or 14 live albums from all different eras. I mean, who the fuck listens to that? I guess originally they were releasing them in some fan club premium member platinum thing where you get sent some CD or some live at somewhere in 91 kind of stuff. But I can see the kind of the logic in it, but yeah, it just feels a bit fucking weird, a bit too lazy, right?
Well, yeah, I think that they're trying to appeal to fans that, like, it's fucking I don't understand that vibe. Like, right, so practice what you preach. If that's your favorite Testament album, would they not be better bringing out just a live version of that record instead of just continually bringing out live stuff and live stuff? I remember buying the Reunion album in 2005 or 2006, whenever it came out live in London, because I went to the gig.
What was
And
the Reformation album called again? The Formation of Damnation, was it?
no, it's like 4 or 5 years before that. Whenever they started doing stuff with Skolnick and stuff again or whatever.
Oh yeah,
When he had his little Beavis and Butthead haircut and stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. Also, I don't think the Testament really have a. Whenever they play live or any of their live recordings, there's too much yo going on, And in all their 80s albums, there's not a lot of that, There's actually more of Chuck Billy doing his high screechy voice than there is him doing his death voice,
Well, I mean, my favorite Testament album is probably The Gathering. Is that sacrilege to say?
No, it's legitimately very, very good record,
It's a long time since I listened to it, but I must go back to it. But I was never a big Testament
I saw
fan.
them on that tour, and I don't think they played one song from The Gathering.
Really?
Yeah, like in 2001 or 2.
Was Lombardo out of the band already then, or what? Or
yeah, like the lineup was like a total mess. Like couldn't even tell you. It was around the time that Chuck Billy was wearing a wig and he was going through chemo and stuff. So.
Oh, okay, right. I've seen utterly awful Testament gigs and some pretty bloody good ones.
Yeah. They I remember it must have been a good long time after Opeth released Deliverance, but I remember Opeth playing at Tosca or something like that, and they played a really, really great gig. And then Testament came out after them and played for 1 hour, and it was fantastic. Like they were really they really read the room fantastically, and knew what songs to play and what people were going to be into. Like, songs like Alone in the Dark and stuff will work really well for a festival crowd, whereas stuff like, I don't know, there's songs from The New Order that I love that just kind of fall on deaf ears, like the song The New Order and The Preacher and stuff.
Oh yeah,
doesn't really necessarily go down as well as some of the anthemic songs,
Into the pit. Well, I will give this is I mean, it's an is it really live? I don't think so, but it's absolutely.
I prefer Decade of Aggression. No.
Well, I have Decade of Aggression here, and no is the answer. This is one of the most fucking caustic, aggressive, fucking half an hours that exist. It's so fucking violent. The Black Magic, Dab of the Sword, Captor.
Definitely no overdubs. That's like, see, the same as in terms of crowd noise, same as the Sodom album, Mortal Way of Life. In between songs, you can hear like one guy going, in the crowd, like instead of it, that awful fake thing that has in Live in the Raw and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that cover.
It's fucking mental. Especially, I like this one of the guy. Where is he?
There's a guy licking a cat's ass, isn't there?
Yeah.
Why? Why not? I suppose. Like if you're in the band Sodom, and I guess that it must have been some fucking decision like that by someone in the label where they're like, cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad record, and it has got the song "Obsessed by Cruelty" on it.
It's fucking class.
But I much prefer this now to Release from Agony. And I prefer this to 80s Live Creator, for sure,
It's amazing. And, like, you can tell that, like, Frank Blackfire was kind of like, this is one of the reasons why he left the band, because they were like, this live album's going to be mostly bass and drums, and then there'll be a big guitar in the background.
And the drum solo.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
I mean,
version of Obsessed by Cruelty.
Obsessed by Cruelty. I mean, I like this, but this is when I was gone from Slayer. I mean, I bought it. Seasons in the Abyss is not my record. I like Seasons in the Abyss, but I don't like I don't like those songs. This record kind of, it's cool, but if it had come out 2 years before, I would have loved it. But by 1990, I was Rotting Christ, Dark Throne, Master's Hammer, Blasphemy, whatever. I just didn't really give a shit. Do you know what I mean? It's I haven't listened to it, I'd say, in 30 years. But this I still listen to all the time. But I don't know how live it is. It sounds like they're playing live, but the crowd, I think it's just like a studio rehearsal, really, isn't it?
Um, is it, I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, to me, I was never like insanely into Live Undead. You know.
No, really.
Yeah, I don't know why. I remember listening to it like a few times whenever I was getting into thrash and stuff. But
When it opens with Black Magic, that opening, it's just fucking brilliant. This is the white um, version, which is only 6 tracks. The sort of black around version is got 8 tracks.
oh, does it? I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I always thought it was like just a 6-track EP. I didn't know that they did like a longer
No,
version.
the track listing on this is different, as I remember. Somebody's probably going to kill me in the comments. Yeah, the 3 people who are listening, but yeah, I don't know. For me, this is the Slayer that you want. Although, I mean, looking at the track list of Decade of Aggression, the track list is off the charts. I wouldn't have Blood Red.
Is there anything that's not on Decade of Aggression that's on Live Undead?
Well, you probably a quick scan. Captor of
I know
Sin.
Dawn There Sleeps and stuff is on.
Captor
on
of Sin, Haunting the Chapel, Fight Till Death.
Yeah, it's probably not on, is it?
No, you're not going to have Fight Till Death. Is not on there. I mean, I don't like Expendable Youth, a Blood Red. I don't want to hear Slayer sing songs about gang warfare and you like. This is just the way I was. As Slayer doing a song Ice-T, forget it. Judgment Night, no, not interested. And the album of covers they did of punk bands was like, oh yeah, really? Where's your cover of Motley Crue and Saxon and Raven and Venom? It was just so calculated because
Could you imagine that they did, if they covered those bands that you just suggested, that album would have went way worse than it did. Like,
I know. I mean, it's not a bad record, but it was just so calculatedly done to try and cash in on punk and MTV's sort of, pop punk ascendancy. It just made me sick because I used to have rehearsals of them doing "Tyrants of the Airwaves" by Raven and.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, really? Okay, just this is all. But then again, I get it. It was like Jeff Hanneman's beer, fucking 5 beers in fucking list of hardcore songs to cover. And it is pretty cool. But at the time...
Well, I don't think it's pretty cool. Like, I wouldn't really listen to, like, pretty much a lot of, any Slayer stuff from the 90s apart from Decade of Aggression.
No, I mean, this is where it ends for me. I don't rate Divine Intervention or any of the shouty stuff. I'm just not interested at all, but
yeah.
I could listen to them do a Minor Threat cover. That was much better,
I don't, you might like this one. What about Live Era by Guns N' Roses? You know what?
I have no idea.
Heard of it?
No.
It's from like 1997 or something like that. And it's just like 30 songs from like the Use Your Illusion. And
let me ask you this though: how, as we all head towards the Chinese social currency system via the digital passport network, how prescient is Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy album lyrically? Huh? Axl knew something.
You can leave that for a separate podcast.
Yeah. Axl knew something that we didn't know 15 years ago. Anyway, so go on.
Could you imagine, listeners, the conversation between Axl and Alan here? They'd be like, yeah. Probably both be talking about Dokken, actually.
I'd like to I think that'd be a class conversation. Yeah, right, go on. So, end of an era, what? Whose era? What is it?
Live Era is the album by Guns N' Roses.
But don't they have Live Like a Suicide from 80-something, or no?
Yeah, but it's just like, they're demos from the 80s. Like, I don't think there's like there's no like songs from their recognized albums. It's like Mom and Kin and Move to the City and all that sort of shit. Like,
Okay, I don't know any of those songs. I mean, I don't. Guns N' Roses were so not my band in the sense that by '88, the kind of line in the sand was drawn, and I was heading from South of Heaven into Bloodfire Death, Leprosy, Malleus Maleficarum, Pestilence, and I just couldn't care less about Guns N' Roses. But looking back, Appetite is obviously one of the greatest rock records ever made. Of course it is, but it just didn't mean anything to me at the time,
Yeah, but sure, what does that matter? Like, if you liked it,
it doesn't matter
now, really, like,
But no, but I would never listen to it now. I'd never play it or anything,
Yeah, but I presume it's one of those records that you don't really listen. You need to play because you're going to hear the songs from it so often in your day-to-day life, like, Like, I presume you don't listen to the Black Album because whatever song from the Black Album, you probably hear it inadvertently at gigs or parties or whatever, you know?
Because my life is only gigs and parties. Yeah, it's true. Right now,
Well,
it's only gigs and
tell,
parties.
tell me what else. Tell everyone else what else you've been doing.
Yeah, because I just the way my life is, I hear, you know, 1 in a million or whatever it is every single day. Yeah.
I can imagine Alan hanging about in the sort of places where they would play 1 in a million
Yeah.
a load.
What's your feeling about this their record then as a live album? Look at he's very surprised on the back, Klaus.
Yeah, like, you know, it was a thing, wasn't it, at the time? Like, so, you know, is this before or after Priest?
This should be 1978. So this is this, Unleashed in the East is 19. Let me think. 1970 end of 1978, I think, because you've got British Steel is 80. You have two albums. You've Stained blah blah. Stained Glass 77. So that so Unleashed in the East is 78. So this is 78 as well.
So it doesn't have Sales of Charion and a couple of other. There's a couple of notable
absences,
isn't there?
It's got Entrance, which is brilliant. He's a Woman, She's a Man. Steam Rock Fever, Robot Man, which is fucking cool. It's got some weird things. Like, it's got covers of Hound Dog and Long Tall Sally. What the fuck is that about? But it's got Fly to the Rainbow, Will Burn the Sky. I mean, it's
great.
Yeah, it's a good record. I mean, I mean, I'm a fan of early 80s Scorpions. I like Big City Nights.
It's a totally different track list again to Worldwide Live, isn't it? Like, you know,
totally.
So again, probably a good testimony to how great those bands' catalogs are, so that they can literally do a live album. Because, like, that's the thing with Lizzie and Blue Oyster Cult and whatever, you know, or UFO. Every live album is going to have probably 10 of the same songs on it.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right, and that does stand to the Scorpions, to testament of what an incredible band they were, who had almost two careers. You know, the 70s and the 80s. This bookends the 70s stuff really, really well. And you're right. I could have and should have picked out Worldwide Live, but Worldwide Live is, it's great, but it's the big arena rock. But maybe a bit like Exit Stage Left to All the World's a Stage. This is more the kind of the culmination of the end of the late 70s stuff. But yeah, Worldwide Live would probably be, for somebody who doesn't really know the Scorpions, it's maybe better to start with, and you get the Big City Nights.
Like, I think unless you're into the Uli John Roth era, you know, there's probably going to be quite a lot of the songs in this album that you don't know if you're into rockers and ballads, as the guys say. Because there's only a couple of ballads really on this. This is before they started going. I think they just got the Aerosmith buzz, you know, where they were like, it has to be 50-50, it has to be 50% ballads.
Well, I mean, there's amazing songs on this. I mean, it's got Speedy's Coming. I mean, Steam Rock Fever. It's got a song in Japanese, which is a bit odd, but Robot Man. Yeah, I mean, it's fucking bangers. You know.
What about The Eagle Has Landed by Saxon? Because it's a definite best of, isn't it? Like, I would nearly say probably better than any Saxon record, is it? Like, Wheels of Steel is great, but, you know, this is a better record, isn't it?
It's a banger.
Like, the band don't sound like they do on album. I think it's just like your man Nigel Glockridge, the drummer, his drums on this album are like fast and full of double bass drumming, and like on some of the records, you know, it's shitty drum production or whatever, like, you know.
Yeah,
like 20,000 Feet sounds amazing on that.
Yeah.
And the studio versions of 20,000 Feet do not sound amazing.
Is Nigel Glocker isn't on, I mean, he isn't on Wheels of Steel. He's not that old in the band.
Like, he's like, is his first album this album, I think, is it?
I think it might be, actually, yeah. No, this is a great record. To me, this goes hand in glove with No Sleep Till Hammersmith. And this, I mean, Motorcycle Man, when it comes in, it just fucking belts it out, you know?
Yeah.
I think this can stand toe to toe with No Sleep Till Hammersmith. I think it's a fucking brilliant record. And
that also goes to show that, like, whistling is a skill and not something that can generally be learnt. You know, you genetically are great at whistling or not, because I guarantee if you and Philly could learn how to whistle like he does, you would have by now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: the side B, you've got Never Surrender, great song, but you've got Fire in the Sky and Machine Gun. Machine
man,
Gun to end with.
Fire in the Sky is one of their best songs. Like.
Sure, but Machine Gun, you kind of think uh, there could be something else there than Machine Gun, couldn't there? I mean, when you look at side one, Motorcycle Man, 747, Prince of the Night, Strong Arm of the Law, Heavy Metal Thunder. That's as a side one. Doesn't get much fucking stronger
Dallas
than that.
1PM's on that record as well, isn't it? It's brilliant. Brilliant song.
No, not on
Is it
this.
not?
No,
Maybe
I
it's
mean
like
it might be
on
on the expanded
album.
CD of it, but it's not on the record. No, Machine Gun. What fucking record is that? Is that from the first record?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything from the first album on that, is there?
No, Rainbow Theme or whatever is not on it.
It's on Denim and Leather, is it? Or...
Don't know. Like what? But and I mean, it doesn't have Denim and Leather on it, but it has Machine Gun on it. It's a bit like why doesn't Number the Beast start Number the Beast? It still annoys me to this day.
You know why it is because Steve Harris, makes mistakes, and as amazing as he is, he makes foolish mistakes. And I think he said as much as himself. He was like, Invaders was probably not a great idea.
No.
It just at the time seemed like a great idea.
No, I mean, I today when I was on I was listening to things on Spotify and I was listening to something else, and Don't Look to the Eyes of a Stranger came on. Wow. Just what a fucking terrible
Cool.
song. Have you got
Pretty
something?
Cool Move by Queensryche, they were just like, this is it.
No, not Queensryche. It's fucking Iron Maiden from X Factor. Or no, not X Factor. The other one, the football record, Virtual
Is that not
11.
a song by? Is that not a Queensryche song?
Don't look through the eyes of a stranger. No, it's Maiden. It's from Virtual 11. It's fucking awful.
Okay.
One of us. Anyway, have you got another? Speaking of awful, have you got any more? Have you got another shit choice?
I think I'm out of shit choices and good choices. I think we need to move.
Well,
or
I mean,
carry on to another carry on.
We haven't mentioned that or that.
Like, why do you keep do I have to reach for vinyls?
No, you don't.
I have vinyl too. I just don't feel as if I need to show you people that I have vinyl.
No, but they're good conversation pieces, and they keep people concentrating on other things. Hey, look at that. Other than our ugly faces. I mean, look at I will give it. Look at that picture of Gene Simmons. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much you can say about these two records. If you don't own any Kiss records,
come on here. Let's get back to reality here. We're not putting Kiss Alive 1, 2, 3, or anyone in the same bracket as Live and Dangerous, are we?
No, we're not. But this is a good live record.
Yep. Kiss are cool.
Well, all right then. Do we need to talk about this? I mean,
I don't think so. I think anyone who's listened to this is aware of Live and Dangerous,
Maybe not, though.
Maybe not. I do have Life Live sitting around. I think we should talk about it.
Right. Well, all right. I mean, I have a few more here, but I mean,
okay. No, hit me. I wanna critique you. I want to critique you. So.
Well, I mean, but they're just kind of like, there's live Candlemass, which I loved when I was a kid. St. Vitus live in '90, which is I love this record. First St. Vitus record I bought that and this and V around the same time, which I fucking absolutely loved. And I had a really crap one, which, as I said to you, was King Diamond live in concert '87, Abigail, which is not very good at all.
But it's not it's one of those releases that came out after the fact, right? They didn't bring that out in 1987 to try and capitalize on their success. It came out to kind of, in what, 1990 something or whatever, did it?
I'm not sure. I think it did, but it says 1991 on the CD here, but I'm not really too sure. It's one of the things that I have that.
So what's the Angel Witch one then?
Well, the Angel Witch is live in 1989 or 90. In front of,
it's not with Lee Altus and
yeah
from Exodus, is it?
Yeah, it's Exodus and Kevin Hayborn. I think I got it for like £1.
Well, surely you can't hate it that much if it was £1.
Oh no, hang on. Well, I mean, hang on a second. Angel Witch is Kevin Hayborn, Peter Gordlier, Spencer Holman, and Grant Taco Bell Dennison. So this isn't the.
They sound like Noom Diploms to me.
Yeah.
So they do.
Well, you see, he's wearing a Laz Rocket T-shirt in the band photo. I don't know.
Trying to get onto the Laz Rocket gravy train, methinks. With Laz Rocket were like, back off, man.
Yeah.
Don't try and harsh my buzz and try and
Are Laz
get in
Rocket
on my
still
side.
going? Do you rate Know Your Enemy?
Yeah.
It's a long
Love
time
it.
since I listened to Know Your Enemy. I have it
It's
somewhere.
fantastic.
What was the
Like, I
second
know.
one? Annihilation Principle.
Know Your Enemy's the third one. The one after it is Annihilation Principle, which is
What
the
are the
kind
first two then?
of City's Gonna Burn and No Stranger to Danger.
No, hang on.
And No Stranger to Danger is good. Like, it's got like killing or Wrecking Machine and Backbreaker and stuff. There's some great songs in it.
Do Cities, the band Cities, not have an album called City's Gonna Burn?
I had on my underrated albums on the list was Annihilation Absolute by Cities. It's good.
All right, yeah.
But no, I think the whole deal with Laz Rocket at that stage was that whenever they did that No Stranger to Danger album, they did a European tour supporting Motorhead in like 1985.
Wow.
And then came back and did like another tour supporting Motorhead and Manowar, and they did like a lot of road work in Europe.
It didn't really work for them, I guess.
Well, I think it worked in Europe, but it just didn't work in England or America or anything like that.
I think it's the name, Laz Rocket. It just sounds like a glam rock band, and I don't think people who liked Motorhead were going to.
Well, the deal was that it was heavy hair at the start, and like by Know Your Enemy and then Annihilation Principle and stuff, and they were touring with Exodus.
Yeah,
they were just like another version of Exodus from San Francisco. So it was like, if you like Exodus enough to want to hear something that sounds exactly like it, knock yourself out. Like Defiance or something where you're like,
yeah, or even by the time the third Heathen album comes around, you've got that Bay Area Crunch, or maybe Defiance. I guess there's a few others, isn't there, who were sort of in and around that same vein.
Yeah, well, I would say that the big difference is that like Laz Rocket were on a major label, like and were touring, in a decent way, even if they didn't make a massive impact in the States. Like they toured supporting LA Guns in the late '80s and stuff like that, and did a lot of decent giggage. I just think it's weird. Like they're one of those bands that, if you go and look at them on Spotify, there could be 5,000 people listening to them a month, and then the next month it could be 25. Which is weird.
That sounds to me like a rather big number that could be possibly listening to Laz Rocket, don't you think?
Yeah, well, like, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I looks, because I be listening to them on the Spotify's.
It's a long time since I mean, this is probably more virtual, what could you say?
Presence.
Stuff that's been spoken about them in however many years.
They supported Metallica on one of the on one of the Fillmore shows for their 20th anniversary. In 2011 they had like Armored Saints supporting them on one show and whatever, and it was the last Laz Rocket gig, and there's not even any video footage of it online. It's like sort of, you would imagine that would be like, boom, here we are supporting Metallica again. Holy shit, amazing, and like that's it, the end, goodbye, good night.
That's so weird. Like, did Death Angel play one of the shows, or?
Yep, Death Angel, Armored Saint, and Laz Rocket.
That's so fucking weird. How did Laz Rocket end up doing that?
Well, they would have gigged with Metallica very regularly back in 1982 in LA, and 1983 in San Fran and stuff.
Like Armored Saint, I get, but like not having, I don't know. That just seems fucking weird to me. But there you go. Right, what do you want to? What was the question? I worded it very badly earlier. An album that you love that I hate, or or is widely perceived to be a classic record that you don't like, or have you got a list of underrated records that you want to go through and I can critique them? Or
well, we've got all of the above, so we do.
Wow.
Okay, so let me start.
What a time to be alive.
Let me start by saying I don't like Seven Churches. Does that make you want to spit on the floor or spit at the laptop or something?
Spit at the church. Evil I get. How can you not like Seven Churches? Like what? That's
the songs, the solos, just the
solos.
The fact that loads of it's out of time and stuff like that I don't like it.
But how can you like? How can you like, for example, Infernal Overkill? and not see this is
Because
cut from the same
this
cloth.
is the thing. Like the Europeans, just you could tell that it was just to do with technical ineptitude that the Sodom and Tankard or Sodom and Creator and Destruction albums, and even the early Sepultura, they meant it, and they were like, ah. Whereas Randy Burns made Seven Churches, you know.
Yeah.
Like if they had played on that record correctly, it would have sounded unbelievably good. You know.
No, I think. I mean, I think Mike.
But also, I don't think that the songs are particularly unreal. You know, it doesn't. It doesn't have the oomph that, because people are like, oh my god, man, this like pioneering record. It came out like in November 1985. Like, you know,
well, don't forget
that's way late into the game. You know, for being like, holy shit, here's death metal for the first time. When did the first Sodom EP come out? That was probably after the Sepultura EP.
In the Sign of In the Sign of Evil is 84.
Yeah, and
Sepultura aren't really in the game. They're 85 is the split with Overdose, Bestial Devastation. So Sodom is before Sepultura, sure. I don't think if the first,
of course, yeah.
But this is way above Sepultura. It's not even in the same conversation. Like to me, this is Stonewall classic, top 2 or 3 death metal, 5 death metal albums of all time. I mean, Twisted Minds, Satan's Curse, Evil Warriors, Burning in Hell. It's just, I mean, if somebody said to me, this is the greatest death metal album of all time, I would probably go, well, I'll hear that argument. I mean,
it sounds like Venom. Like it's got the problems that I have with early Venom, where you're like, this is not like, why does this not have the same tightness and like oomph, or not even tightness? Tightness is the wrong word. Why is it not in time? You know,
like well, it is in time. But I think the thing about Mike Suss is only 15 or 16 years old on the record. You know.
Yeah, well, the drummer in Death Angel was like 12 or something, wasn't he, on the first album? Or 15?
Maybe so, but they were kind of prodigal sons. No, I can't. I wouldn't. I mean, to me, the vocals are fucking caustic. They're fucking insanely aggressive. I mean,
they are.
You can hear where
death. Are.
You can hear where death took so much for Scream Bloody Gore. But in '85, I mean, what's more extreme than this in '85? I mean, okay, Hell Awaits or something, but you're only really talking about Sodom is extreme, but it's more violent or something, or caustic. But there's a sort of extremity to this that's a bit more death metal in its sense.
But I think it's the vocals, man. Like the vocals are the thing about Seven Churches that people like that. Yeah, that people associate with death metal. Like for sure, this is probably the first time it's been there, because right on the European, you know, black metal-y releases from 84, 85 and stuff, the vocals are not in the same level of gutturalness. You know,
this is a bit more violent. I would
say that's my thing with this album, is more that I don't like musically. I'm not a fan of this record. I don't think that it kicks ass in the way that a lot of the other people do. But you're like, you can't fucking agree with everyone, like, you know.
No.
So
no, I mean, I don't know. To me, it's totally and utterly seminal. I mean, and I love Beyond the Gates as well, and I love Eyes of Horror. Beyond the Gates is a weird, crude, cruel, weird sounding, empty record. Like, it really sounds empty. There's no bass into it. The guitar sound is so scooped and strange. I love it. Like, how the fuck they got that sound, I'd love to know. But no, I mean, I don't know. I think this is a Stonewall classic. Pentagram, The Exorcist. And the guitar tone is fucking savage. I know what you mean. It's a bit out of time. But, like, then again, it's 85. I mean, look at all the other things that were... You've got Endless Pain. You've got Infernal Overkill. Yeah. I mean, to me, this sits above those. To me, this is like... It's not quite on the Slayer, you know, Hell Awaits.
I think it's better than Obsessed by Cruelty.
No, I think it's its equal. I think it's better than Endless Pain. I think it's better than Infernal Overkill.
Well, like, you know, Endless Pain.
To me, this is there with Bonded by Blood. Bonded by Blood and Seven Churches are, you know.
I'm gonna go and take a piss and be sick at the same time, saying this is as good as Bonded by Blood.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the Seven Churches is like the... I mean, to me, it's there's a division, you know, in the sense that for me, you've got your lineage between black metal to Bonded by Blood to Seven Churches to Pleasure to Kill to Infernal Overkill. These are all classics in this sort of, for me, the sort of more nasty, evil kind of vein. And that there's a big line in the sand upon which Seven Churches is like a pillar of all that before you step over into what was for me kind of like regular thrash metal. So I totally gravitated. Like to me, this is the same as Bathory Under the Sign of the Black Mark. It's in that kind of vein, and that's just stuff. That's the stuff that always just appealed to me more than, well, particularly what we're about to talk about. You know,
which is
do you have it? Its yellowness on record there.
I do somewhere. What's that album? It looks yellow to me. No, okay, not that. Something else.
What was that?
Okay.
Was that Macabre?
No, that's look at the lovely faces on them. Hey guys.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's Rust in Peace with no.
State of Euphoria.
I fucking I can't stand it.
So, like, the first thing you obviously need to say is it's not as good as Among the Living, is it?
No, it isn't.
Ew.
No,
certainly is not. But
it's a weird kind of rushed sounding record, and I mean the fact that they pinned.
I don't think it's rushed. I think it's just like if you listen to other bands' records from 1988, like Survive by Nuclear Assault or like Justice for All, etc., that was just the zeitgeist. People wanted their albums to sound like a tinny fucking shit pile, like, you know.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, I watched those, as we talked about before. I watched those Anthrax documentary things, and they kind of suggested like oh, we sort of rushed it to go on tour with And I mean, like, I'm not an Anthrax fan, but I think what I hated the most about this record was I hated "I'm the Man," which is
what's on that record.
No, I know, but that just before that, "I'm the Man" and the whole rap thing was the sort of laid the template for so much horrible music in the 90s. I think it must be laid squarely at Anthrax's door. So I hated them before.
What, for mixing rap and rock music? Is that not Blondie?
No, and then I think I hated it so much. And then when that record came out, the fact that I just saw it on the decks and it was yellow, it just made me fucking angry. But it just seemed to me that
is probably part of the point, isn't it? Like, it's the kind of same as like that Acid Rain album that's pink that says obnoxious or whatever.
Ugh.
It's like it's supposed to annoy people, you know, who it's supposed to annoy. And I think maybe that was the crack with the Anthrax thing.
I think at the time, by even their own admission, when you watch those small little documentary clips, they felt that they got a bit too board shorts and a bit too goofy and a bit too whatever. And to me, the album just epitomized.
Hence the fucking 180 on the next record, where they were like, okay, let's try and be dark and we'll try and have a darker stage set and a darker vibe. But the thing, like, I think what happened with this record is number one, I like it. I think that like the tunes are very off kilter. Like, it's definitely a lot more. What's a
good song from this? I remember, man, I need just 6 packs just to look at your face. Finally, and I remember I hated that.
Oh, what else? Like near the end or whatever.
What else is on it?
I like Making Me Laugh, and I like Be All End All, and like, other tunes like Schism and stuff. But like, what I was gonna say is, I think that they were definitely trying to prove that they had some sort of like musical knowledge on this record that they didn't have.
Do you think so?
Like, it was trying to be a wee bit too, let's abandon verse, chorus, cool chorus, I Am the Law type songs, and try and make things a bit more. If the drummer's going to start writing all the songs, you're going to get a lot of songs that start with drum fills and drum beats.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. Like after, I think even by Among the Living, like, he was writing a whole bunch, like most of their music.
Oh, right.
Scott Ian was always the guy who wrote the lyrics on Anthrax, and Charlie Benante, after Dan Leiker left and stuff, started becoming the main guy for riffage and stuff.
What from that record is still in the live set? Has anything remained? I mean, I just remember hating
Antisocial and Be All and End All are both still in the set.
I hated Antisocial.
But it's one of those things in that at the time, like your feelings are all based on how you felt in 1988. Like, same as like I meet people who love Megadeth who are like, "Oh, Anarchy in the UK makes me
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to vomit," you know.
I hated it as well.
And like we've talked about this before, Thrash's reliance on covers. You know, this covers version is going to turn us into, you know, because again, like I think we did talk about this, but this all came from Quiet Riot being a band who, you know, were not that well known to doing a cover
Come
song of
on, feel
a
the
Slade and then being
noise.
like,
Yeah,
boom, here we are in an arena, kid. Like, you know.
yeah. I think it was a bad habit that you can tell. Um, I mean, Metallica didn't do it. I mean, they were, and I listened to Master of Puppets today. I just did a
Or did they, like, you know, like it didn't make them bigger, but like, you know, Am I Evil by Diamond Head was
but yeah, but it was on the B side of Creeping Death. It wasn't on a record. You know what I mean? And whereas Megadeth made the mistake of putting a cover on each one of the first three records, which was just fucking stupid. I mean, Iron Superstitious, I mean, makes it makes an album that is almost in the same punching league as Master Puppets, brings it down. It's like, what is this song doing here? It did. Could you?
would you say the same with Boots Are Made for Walking?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, forget it. I mean, to think about it, that they could have opened Peace Cells, or not open side to a Peace Cells, maybe with, or put Into the Lungs of Hell, which was a song hanging around at the time, and instead they put I Ain't Superstitious. It's just like,
Ah, well, you know, again, this is the same deal. Like, you know, all these bands had managers, all
mm.
these managers, you know, in LA, seeing other
But
bands
Metallica
succeed
didn't
with
do it
covers.
though, you know.
Yeah, but they were managed by Q Prime in
Also, Slayer didn't do it.
1984.
Slayer didn't stick a cover into Hell Awaits. I mean, how could that have
No, but
worked?
like I think until the time that they signed with Def Jam, like Slayer were not in a position where that, like, right, you may agree or disagree with me here, but there was a lot of bands at that time before Slayer signed with Def Jam when they were just on Metal Blade. There were other bands like Armored Saint who were on major label deals with Chrysalis and stuff, you know.
Mm.
So I'm not saying that they were more popular than Slayer, but it looked like a better commercial vibe. It was only whenever like Rick Rubin was like, just go and make the most insanely aggressive album that you can possibly make. And they were like, cool, let's do that. I don't think that if they had made a third album for Metal Blade or whatever, it would have made anywhere near the same impact as Rain and Blood made, you know?
No, Rain and Blood is just it's part of its cultural zeitgeist is the fact that it is indeed on Def Jam, and it's sort of a
Yep.
whole raises them into a whole other level, you know.
Well, it's also because it was like, here's this sort of music that we're going to introduce to a massively different audience.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who were buying Def Jam records just on spec, you
But
know,
also the thing about Rain and
got
Blood,
into metal because of
yeah,
that record, you know?
the thing about the Rain and Blood also is that there's nothing like because it's such a terrifying record. There's not an inch of that like you could play Rain and Blood to somebody who just only listened to hip hop and they go, "All right, I get that." Not and not in a kind of the usual. It was the first record, one of the first records I think that came along that literally just smashed that sort of image that for non-metal fans had of metal as being a bit goofy, a bit nerdy, a bit sort of Dungeons and Dragons and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, a
Yeah.
bit camp and whatever. Here's Rain and Blood, and it's you couldn't you couldn't laugh at it, you couldn't poke fun at it, you couldn't. There's not an inch of fat on it. It's the most muscular, violent record of all time made in 1986, and there's like you could play it someday, go, yeah, there's nothing I can say about this. You either hate it because you hate the sound of it, but there was nothing funny or you couldn't poke fun at it, you know. And I think that's maybe it's one of the
I
first
think
metal records that you could ever say
But I
about.
think that's where your problem is with State Euphoria is that like you are looking at the record, you know, and
Yeah,
then listen to it, you know. And right, I'm not saying that it's as good as their other '80s records because it's not, but I think that it has a lot of cool stuff on it that people tend to ignore because they associate it with weird shorts and yellow and big stupid drones, you know.
yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's just like I mean, it just. I mean, being a cantankerous, grumpy 13 or 14-year-old who didn't, I wanted to hear Altars of Madness and Leprosy and demos, and I wanted Leather and fucking Satan and stuff. That Anthrax were, I don't know. There was just something we kind of looked down our noses at people who liked them because
Yep.
they were sort of seen as like, oh, you don't really get death metal or don't really get metal because you like skateboarding and you like Ninja Turtles and you like all the stuff that by that. bunch of, me and some of my friends, of course, Anthrax were huge. It didn't make any difference. And I sold them in 89. Like, I sold them for fucking State of Euphoria. But it was just too goofy, you know?
Yeah.
And I couldn't relate to it. And I mean, I still, like, um, still can't resonate with me. I find I'd rather listen to the first couple of John Bush. I'd rather those than this era of Anthrax,
Yeah. Well, it's never going to be one of those ones that they're going to go out and play the full album live or whatever.
No.
But
No.
I think a lot of people who really like Anthrax actually really, really like this record. And it's probably not the majority of metal fans. And like it is a bit of it's a bit of a skip on discographies whenever people are like, the famous song from this record is a cover,
Yeah, well, what's the record after it? The record after it is Persistence of Time, isn't it?
Yep.
Which is a huge record.
Yeah, but like if you told me that album had sold just as many copies as the previous one, I would say, yeah, that makes total sense. I don't think that they were in that Slayer kind of vein where they were like, album's gonna sell 1 million copies exactly. I don't think they were ever going to be in that same sort of deal as Megadeth, where they were, or Metallica, where they were going to make albums that were going to sell 6 or 7 million copies.
No, I mean, I think the biggest selling
thing that like it's important to remember with this record is that like they were on tour with Iron Maiden, and Iron Maiden at that stage could do a year on the road, go away for 4 months, and come out with a classic record. And Anthrax tried to do the same thing and couldn't do it. And exactly the same thing happened to Testament. They tried to do the same thing. They did a big, massive tour for the New Order, or Practice What You Preach, rather, and were forced to go into the studio in those Maiden type, come on, we're all going to get together and we're going to make this amazing album.
But isn't that just because the sort of winds of heavy metal were changing, and by like people, I don't think people quite realize, but like by the end of 90, really, almost start of 91, thrash metal was kind of done and dusted. It was kind of over, and all the bands were sort of released into whatever. Megadeth got bigger. Metallica obviously were in some other world. Slayer was still Slayer, but sort of got trapped in a small little circle of ever decreasing influences. Anthrax tried to step sideways into something darker and whatever, but most people don't realize that your average thrash metal band by 91 was with the Exodus, the Testaments, the Death Angels, all these kind of bands. They were kind of done, Forbidden and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah. Well, like there were certainly lots of good albums, some thrash albums from 1990 and 1991 and stuff, but by the same token, the musical landscape was changing, and like you would probably edge more on the side of, yeah, people start getting into underground stuff, but really what happened is that the million people who had been buying Anthrax albums up until that stage probably started, growing up a little bit, or listen to grunge music or whatever they were doing, listen to Guns N' Roses or the Rolling Stones.
Well, also,
I think that there's certainly all the people who liked angry metal music, went and started listening to death metal and stuff.
I mean,
but it was never more than 500,000 people out of the million people who might have bought a Testament album.
Sure. I mean, I don't imagine there's any one Testament album that sold 1 million copies, but I would say there's quite a few that hit 500,000 for sure. But or maybe 600,000-700,000, I don't know. But it is totally true that they lost some fans when the 80s moved into the 90s, but Morbid Angel and Deicide and Obituary and stuff came up, and nobody really bands like Death Angel were just lost in the mix there. Where did they go? Because if you didn't make it out of the gate to try and follow a sort of Queensryche sort of more straight hard rock place, where did you go to?
If you weren't going to be a massive commercial success, then the only other option was to remain in the underground, in that Exodus level of selling 500 or 400,000 records.
But I don't think Exodus, by the time Exodus made Force of Habit, I mean, it was kind of done and dusted for them. I can't imagine if Exodus had done a European tour in 94, let's say, or 93 for Force of Habit, I don't think there's more than 150, 175, 200
No,
people showing up,
but like you need to also remember that
and they don't want to hear Forza Habit either.
what was a massive success for Combat Records, like Fabulous Disaster, maybe sell 300,000 copies,
Yeah, sure.
was a total disaster for Combat or for Capital Records, you know, and Forza Habit. And they
Mm.
probably, as much as we think that Forza Habit was a turkey with a massive machine behind them like that and videos, they probably did sell 300,000 copies,
Well,
but that was still
I
way,
couldn't
way
see,
less than they needed, you know?
I couldn't see them replicating the sales of Impact is Imminent for Forza Habit. There's just a musical landscape. It changed so much that I think those bands were just. I'm not saying they did nothing, but I'd say they went from doing, I mean, 250,000. I'd say they went to selling 40, 50,000, 60,000, maybe. I mean, I think all those
No, well,
bands took a
I
huge.
don't think, like, on what album? On Force of Habit, they sold 60,000.
I don't know. Let's say let's say Impact is Imminent did. Do you think it did 250,000, 250,000 copies?
I think if it did less than 300,000 that Fabulous Disaster had it done, they wouldn't pick them up for the next option.
Right. Okay. So I'd say Impact
Like
is
that,
Imminent
that is the thing with
probably.
major labels. It's the same with Testament. Like they're not going to
Sure,
bank
but
something that's going downhill.
well, yeah, sure, but still, the writing wasn't quite on the wall for all those bands. But I would say if Fabulous Disaster had done 250,000, let's say, for argument's sake, I can't see when the musical landscape had changed so completely and there was no outlet for those bands, and those bands also weren't touring generally the same way. I can't see how Force of Habit even did six figures. I can't see how it did 100,000. I don't know anyone who owns it. I don't know
Yep.
anybody who most people don't even know it exists. I mean, so I can't see, or like I can't see how Forbidden Green managed to even do 20, 25,000 copies. I just, I
I
can't
think it
see.
might only come out in Europe. Did it? Did it only come out in
Maybe
Golden
even
Records in
Japan.
Europe?
I don't know. I mean, maybe with Japan and something. I don't know. Maybe, but I just think
I
for
think there's
so
a bit
many.
of lumpage here though, like because there's no way you could consider the green by
Sure.
Forbidden or
Okay.
Renewal or whatever. Obviously, if Exodus or Testament, the Ritual or Force of Habit, like I know the Ritual sold more copies than any Testament album, which
Mm.
is insane. But as you said, maybe it's not a million copies. Maybe they sold 500, 600,000 or whatever.
I'm not
But they
sure. I
were
mean,
selling them to people who were not fans of Testament. They were selling them to people who were not going to buy the back catalog and come to the gigs. They were
I
just
don't know. I mean, I'd have to look into it. But I mean, maybe Testament had a. Did they have a song the bat? I don't know. Maybe they had a hit on that. I don't know. But I just can't
Return
see
to
it.
Serenity was a hit.
I
Well,
just
a
can't
hit.
see a thrash metal band still selling 250,000, 300,000 records in 1994, 95. I just can't see it. I don't know where they were selling those records. I mean, the kind of bottom has fallen out of so much of that stuff. MTV wasn't playing the videos so much anymore. I think it was so completely at odds with the musical zeitgeist at the time. I can't see where they were selling those records. But I mean, I'd
Well,
have to.
1994 is a different time than 1992, isn't it?
It is totally. But 1992 was still death metal. Don't forget black metal, Blazing the Northern Sky, and all these records are coming out. I just think your average extreme metal fan is just not interested in whatever is the new
But
Flat
were the average extreme metal fan, buying Return to Serenity by Testament? Probably not
No,
really,
no, but they weren't.
Like
But I
aiming
don't
for a
know who
totally different,
was. They weren't, but I don't know who
like
was.
passing fans is the answer to that. Like,
But
people who
but
were
even
not.
being around at the time, I don't know who that was. I mean, because if you think about it, if those people existed, then surely when Testament come out and play now, so there must have been, if they'd sold 500,000 copies of said album from 1993, 94, surely there must be somebody who comes to see them now who's like, oh, I want to hear that song from The Ritual. And
Yeah, they play
I guarantee you they
Electric
play,
Crown, don't they? Every gig
play what?
or most gigs, Electric Crown. They play that at most of their gigs, don't they?
Do they? Do you think that's the
Yeah.
song people are dying to hear compared to?
Well, I think it's in the same league as like Listen to Only by Anthrax or whatever.
Yeah, all right.
The same deal. Like it's like here's the early '90s hit that wasn't a hit for these kind of bands, but like I think you have a different experience because you were in your black metal tower in 1991. So I don't think that you necessarily like were in tune with what other people like. I have a lot of friends here who probably listen to Testament while wearing a plaid shirt and listening to Nirvana, and you weren't doing either of those things.
No, no, I suppose not. No, it's a fair point. I'm just wondering where those sales came from. But then again, maybe the music industry was still in its pomp, still in its healthy buzz, and still able to shift a couple of 100,000 records of things that you would never believe now. I don't know.
Totally, and that is the crack. Like that's why bands like Annihilator made albums on major labels. Now or Flotsam and Jetsam. Now they might have made 3 albums consecutively on the same label, but whenever they got you know kicked off MCA, they ended up on whatever other major label around that time until,
It's a
as
really,
you say, 93, 94, when people were just like,
it's a
time to
really,
cash in the chips.
it's a really interesting time. I'd love to see a list of all those kind of post thrash kind of bands in '92 to say '94, and just look at the record labels they were on and see the
Yeah,
approximate
what they
sales,
did.
and
Because
just be
that's the thing about the Nielsen SoundScan. It starts in 91, doesn't it? So
hmm,
theoretically,
you should be able to find
90% of
out.
the records that we're talking about should be on there. We should be able to go and find out how
I
many
don't know. I
copies
don't know
each
where.
of
I
those
don't know where you
labels.
go to find out how many Lights, Camera, Revolution sold, or that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, that's a huge record, but I mean, I don't. I'm not sure where you go to find out how much Quattro sold, or
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I asked the guys for our bet about this. I asked the drummer and the guitar player and stuff, and they were like, "Oh, well, we don't know." I think it's because they don't want to turn around and say, "Here's the figure," and then someone say, "Actually, you've overestimated that by 175,000 copies."
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You knew. Okay, so we're going to talk about. No, we're not talking about that anymore.
Yeah.
Talk about our little list of, because people asked us in the comments a while ago for underrated records or albums that they should maybe get into that they maybe have not heard on.
Well, let me just
Um,
just pause this for a second.
what were we doing?
That was technically a Vogue.
Who knows?
A Vogue. That's what I was doing.
Doing a bit of voguing, were you?
Is that still a thing? Do the kids still Vogue?
If you're asking a 39-year-old, you're in deep shit, buddy. Was that like? Did you like? Were you listening to Madonna in the early '90s, or were you not allowed to? Or
Listening to
you listen to
Madonna.
Madonna now? No.
I mean, I say this and people don't believe me, but I never listened to pop music. I never liked pop music. I never went through a phase where I went, "Oh, I really
Yeah, but
like
you like The
Aha."
Cure and Tears for Fears and stuff
Okay,
like that.
oh
And
yeah. I mean, I
I
liked.
presume you don't hate Bruce Springsteen or fucking
Ugh,
whatever, do
I
you?
hate Bruce. No, I do. I absolutely hate Bruce Springsteen. Yeah, sentimental fucking muck. I
Sentimental is a great way to
I
put it.
hate this last album, the last Christmas with this letter to you. Ugh, I hate it. That was a rather extreme reaction, no, but I do hate it.
It
This
did come out like a yeah.
I hate it. No, I mean it sounds ridiculous, but I my earliest memory of getting into like sort of rock is '83, Eliminator, AC/DC, whatever. But I don't remember liking Shakin' Stevens or liking Aha or liking pop music. Of course, I like The Cure, so but that's a bit different. But or I don't really count them in quite the same thing as pop music. So
Yeah, but like
like
if you like Radio Gaga whenever you were a kid or
not
whatever.
really. I mean, I don't mind Queen, but I just wasn't really interested in it. Like, I don't have any. I don't own any pop records. I mean, there's an Adam and the Ants record there and Flock of Seagulls, if that matters. But no, I don't have any soft spot for listening to '80s pop music or anything at all like
Apart
that.
from Flock of Seagulls and Adam and the Ants and The Cure and Tears for Fears
But
and
I
stuff.
like
Yeah.
things that have a sort of kind of proto goth, kind of like whether it's Bauhaus or Sisters of Mercy. But I don't think that's really pop
But
pop.
is the reason why you like it because there are dreary elements about it,
Yeah.
or is the reason that you like it because it's good?
In the beginning, it was because it was dreary. There's no doubt about that. But it generally, but I mean, I don't. I'm not somebody who.
Everybody Wants to Rule the World isn't a dreary song, is it?
No, but it's not.
But it
That's not
has
really
a
my.
sort of enjoyable quality, you would
Like when I
imagine.
listen to The Cure, I don't want to hear Love Cats. I want to hear all of Pornography. I'm not really interested in the pop songs or whatever. Um,
Yeah, but you would. I'm sure you would also say that Friday I'm in Love is a good song.
it is an amazing song, yeah, but it's quite
Okay.
melancholic and quite sad.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, Lizzie fans. Everyone who's a Lizzie fan probably loves, Old Town or whatever,
Not
whatever
me.
Phil Lynott hit,
No,
No.
no, I don't. I don't like things like that at all. No, I mean it sounds ridiculous, but no, I don't have. I don't have uh, any listening time or any. I never had any for that. It was either kind of dark stuff or aggressive stuff or sort of soundtracky stuff. Or no, I don't remember. I don't have Madonna True Blue somewhere stuck in my memory or so. Or Aha, whatever that record is, the black and white, Hunting High and Low, and it's some
But
okay
that's the
songs.
weird thing, isn't it? Like, because like you are aware that that album exists, True Blue or the
Yeah,
song or whatever. So it's
yeah.
like
It's
you
mainly.
do have some knowledge of it, but
It
it's like
is. It's
you
mainly
have to
because
deny that it exists.
mainly because my sister is 4 years younger than me, and she would have played that when she
Okay,
was.
right.
But I don't have any like. There isn't a part of me that gets drunk and wants to listen to hip hop, or wants to listen to rap, or wants to listen to jazz, or wants to hear cheesy pop music. I just don't. It just doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't. There's no resonance of that whatsoever. It's much more likely, like in '88 or '89, I would have. It sounds just kind of cliche, but I was more interested in just collecting demos and listening to Death and Pestilence and Morbid Angel. I went my descent into like quite extreme stuff was pretty quick, and it was all I was interested in. I had no,
Yeah,
I
well,
had
what
a
age were you in
completely
1988? Like
narrow.
17 or something like that? Or
In what year?
15? 1988.
I was 13, 14. Like
Okay.
my scope was so narrow, in that all I wanted to hear was like Death, Pestilence, Battery, Immolation demos. I mean, the idea of listening to pop music, I don't even know where that wasn't even in my head at all. Like I have no light listening tastes, so to speak.
Because
None.
that's the weird thing, isn't it? Because it's like it's extreme listening in one regard,
Yeah.
but it's not extreme listening in another regard. Because like you're listening to extremely, violent and progressive and like specifically cutting edge music, like as in music that was like really, really
Yeah.
of the moment, and it wasn't music for people who were born in 1960 or whatever. It
No.
was specifically for people who were very young and about it. But I would also say that like uh, I don't know. I think that like it's limiting only listening to one thing, And like
Sure.
I was the same guy as you, where I only wanted to listen to Metallica whenever I was 15. But whenever I was 17, I was listening to as much of everything as I humanly could.
I have to say honestly, I wasn't, and it didn't bother me. I didn't care. I mean, I listened to other stuff, but it was like it would be Dead Can Dance, or it would be
Yeah.
Joy Division, or it would be I'd be like trying to get into soundtrack music, or but it had to be. It sounds like a real cliche, but it had to be dark or gloomy, or like I didn't listen to anything upbeat, cheery, poppy, happy at all. The for me that part of my listening taste was reserved for ACDC and Wasp, and that was where that was stayed, and everything else
Did you
was
still
just
listen to Eliminator whenever you were in that zone in the early 90s, or were you
not
kind of
really.
like,
No,
that's not my vibe anymore?
no, not really. I mean, most of my vibe in '89 to about '94 was Morbid Angel, Beherit, Blasphemy. Um, I didn't really even give a shit about No Prayer for the Dying, or I hardly gave a shit about Rust in Peace or anything. It was literally all or like underground, trying to collect underground demos and Immolation and um, whatever else like that. I had no, I literally had the only things I liked that weren't like that was just maybe, yeah, maybe like The Cure, maybe Bauhaus, Joy Division, just sad, sort of dreary, melancholic stuff. So it was
But
either
Friday
full on,
I'm Love is not sad, is it?
yeah, it was just basically either full on aggression or tape trading dark stuff, proto black death metal stuff, well, not proto, but just black death metal stuff, or sort of, I guess, goth feels the Nephilim, Sisters of Mercy, all that kind of stuff. I just had no time for anything that was like, I couldn't think of anything worse than having to listen to REM or anything like that. I didn't like the Smiths at the time, and now I love them. But the Smiths has a sort of dark melancholy to it.
I don't like the Smiths at all. So I don't, and I think it's just because of him, you know. Well, actually, it's not, because people go on about Johnny Marr in a way that annoys me, because I'm like, I
He is
think I
brilliant.
always draw
He's brilliant.
comparisons with him and the Police, because people are annoyed by Sting, and I'm annoyed by Sting, but I love the Police, and I think the Police are cool, and the guitar playing's great. Whereas like Johnny Marr's guitar playing just seems
Ah,
kind of
come on now.
fucking
That's not that. In
shit, you
fairness,
know.
Johnny Marr is fucking brilliant. And
What brilliant bits are there?
I mean, take a listen to the star of What Difference Does It Make or Cemetery Gates or so much good stuff. But I mean, I only fell in love with them in the last 10 years, you know. But I do
Yeah.
hate the Police. You'll be happy to know
But I tell you what, though, that is something
because
that
I
you will
deeply
welcome,
hate
the idea
reggae.
that if if you don't like the Police now, and it's taken you, 30 years to get into, the Smiths, I think by the time you're in your 50s or 60s, you could probably be listening to Oasis
Yeah,
or
yeah,
anything really. The world is your oyster, bud.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like it's just the Smiths or the Police. I just hate reggae. Um,
Yeah,
like
sure. How many reggae songs have? Very few,
Walking on the Moon. Do
Yeah,
do
that's one
do.
of them.
Message in a bottle. I don't know. I mean, I don't mind them. I think I was just never really interested in like clever music,
I suppose
clever in that sense, you know.
it's quite a strange thing, because like for someone who's into like a new romanticism, like
Yeah,
bands like Tears for Fears, or Joy Division and stuff like that,
yeah,
which isn't actually really a million miles away from what we're talking about, or the Talking Heads.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like the Police and Talking Heads are, imagine, like really against what you would possibly want to be listening to if you're relaxing.
Yeah, see, I never on and this, again the same thing when I wanted to. If we're talking about relaxing or whatever, it was always the thing I would have reached for would have been like Dead Can Dance or something like that. It wasn't like Talking Heads just irritated me. It was just too smart alecky in the sense it
But
made me want to listen to
this is the
Hellhammer.
brilliant thing about it, man, is that like
Mm.
this conversation is just a fucking illumination that music is a journey. And there's stuff that you're listening to now that 18-year-old you would be very upset that you're listening to, and
Um,
so on and so on. Like I think
not as much as you would think actually. Um, there's not that many. Honestly, there's not that many things now that I could listen to that my 18-year-old self would be like, "What are you doing?" Like maybe the Smiths a little bit, but I think even my 18-year-old self, if he'd really bothered, would have gone, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it. It's a bit dark, it's dreary." And the lyric, because I was really into Leonard Cohen. Like I love Leonard Cohen, and I started to get into the Birthday Party and a bit of Nick Cave and stuff. So if I'd really listened, then the lyricism involved in the Smiths would have appealed to me on some level.
yeah.
If I'd taken the time out to listen, but I didn't because I don't like it, you know. But honestly, I think that I don't. It sounds weird, but I don't think my 18-year-old self would have, um, dis, you know, would have dis, you know, disliked that much that I'm listening to now, which maybe points to me not progressing much musically. I don't know. It doesn't really bother me though. In that I
Well,
did.
just because you're still listening to If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Like there's many, many, many fucking transcendental albums that have come and you know
I mean,
come and
most of my
gone.
the albums that I played the most, for example, over the last 2 years, have been like Alter the Madness, Blessed is Sick, Once Upon the Cross, Legion, Dawn of Possession, all violent death metal from 30 years ago, or modern versions of the same thing. It's almost all exclusively super aggressive, or lots and lots of underground nasty black metal stuff from Ukraine and Russia and Poland. That's literally makes up 80% of my listening. Like there isn't any pop off switch where I go and I play Johnny Hates Jazz or fucking, or I don't know, where the fuck did that name come from? I don't know. I don't have, there's no part of my listening taste that are like, I really could do with some smooth house jazz to chill out today. I'm much more likely to go, I need to hear Gorguts or Decibel Omega or,
While making your dinner.
yeah, or Revenge. That's just kind of, there's no off switch for all that stuff. So there's no, um, to be a fly on the wall would be like, oh, so he's not listening to Miles Davis or he's not listening to.
You don't drive. Like I think a lot of people who like in their day to day, if they do drive and stuff, listen to metal and stuff like that. Like I listen to lots of Sodom and stuff, and like Philly doesn't really listen to a lot of like he would never listen to metal in the house, you know.
No, well,
But
he
if he
played
was
lots
in,
of 80s pop music for me on the way down in the car till I wanted to throw him
but
out
you
the
know what I
window.
mean. Like as in like there's a lot of people who that's where they get their sort of oomph out. You know, if you're listening to fast music while driving fast and stuff, you
Mm.
know. Whereas I don't know, maybe it's just because I've never done it, but like I couldn't imagine walking around shopping while blasting something that was really, really sort of, you know, distracting. Like, you know,
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a metalhead and I still listen to mostly, nearly all heavy metal. I mean, it's Kieran took my when we still had iPods a few years ago, and he was just like scroll, 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 and he's like, "It's all fucking metal." I go, "Yeah, there's no Chieftains 4. I'm not listening to Astro Weeks. I couldn't give a shit about it, to be honest. I just don't care. I'm not mellowing out to the Stone Roses or whatever. I'm far more likely to be listening to Infernal War than to be bothered playing. I'm just not interested. I mean, Van Morrison, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna sit in the van listening to
you
that.
should listen to his new album. His new album has got lots of Alan type topics going on. There's like a song called "Why You" on Facebook,
I've heard,
and you
I've
know,
heard that. I've heard he's gone a
yeah,
bit
it's
feral.
like an it's like a total anti, you know, fucking anti-lockdown album. Like
It's and didn't he get up in some
you can be
didn't he
its
get
fan.
but didn't he get up in some old hotel to sing and had to it was cancelled and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, and he got some guy from the DUP up to, you know,
Do you
like
think do you think he'd come on the
like
podcast? We could do like a sort
he
of
might.
Zoom. You could be like the silent partner and soon do nothing, and I could interview him. He'd be into
You would
that,
keep
wouldn't
mentioning bands and stuff like that, like you know, or like in these records that like he'd be like,
he? No, 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 no. I'd only want to talk about. Give me your lockdown perspective and let's talk about the
like
World Economic Forum and
I think he's
all
a
that kind of
total
stuff.
moron and stuff. Like, and he's got a fucking long history of treating people like crap and stuff like that
Oh
that
yeah, no,
I've heard.
I've heard he's a
But
complete dickhead, but yeah, yeah,
by the same token, he funded a whole bunch of musicians in the north. He set up a fund for, you know, paying people who you know had tour dates cancelled and etc. You know, so
yeah.
like he's
Which
definitely into the art and stuff like that, and
yeah.
fair play to him for being an independent artist of the stature he is. Like,
Well, and
he's
also we'll say this. I mean, this is just random chat stuff, but think about over the whole lockdown, whatever. Regardless of your opinion about it, the way the arts has been treated, um, very few big artists spoke out against what was happening. I didn't hear anything coming from the Bonos of this world or the Sinead O'Connors, but Van Morrison consistently spoke out against some of the
does that
restrictions of
mean
what
the
was
next
happening.
Primordial album's gonna have a load of songs called "Why Aren't You on Facebook" or whatever, or "Why Are You on Facebook"?
Get out of the metaverse and into my car or whatever.
Yep. Do you think the lads in the band might go for it? To be like 30 years in, that's the right time to
I
make
wonder
a
if
change.
I do think that maybe before the next time they will ask me, "What are you writing this lyrics about?" Whereas normally nobody would care.
Be
Just to
worried about it.
just to make sure that there's no sort of imagine how many thrash metal bands are going to release songs about the lockdown now in the next year or two. Or
We wrote a song about the lockdown, so it did. So
yours was living for the lockdown, wasn't it?
yeah, well, it was about sitting drinking cans of McCardles in your house or
Yeah,
whatever, you know.
yeah.
But I digress. I digress.
Oh yeah.
Are we going
What
to
was
talk
it?
about underrated albums or are we not?
I don't know because it's like looking at the little time counter in the corner. It's like 3 hours and 20 minutes. I think you might keep it for the next time. To be honest with you,
Right here, right here.
hang on, let press